Greetings. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you to our webinar series titled We Can Achieve More, a dialogue on a Black male experience. I hope that everyone present is both healthy and safe. My name is Dan Thomas, and I serve as the Program Director for the Todd Anthony Bell National Resource Center on the African American Male, and will also serve as today's moderator. Today, you are participating in the final segment of a four-part series designed to provide Black males a platform to speak candidly concerning their experiences in academia. Our session today will focus on the experiences of the five Black staff members at The Ohio State University. During the conversation, we hope to share vital support units on campus, university challenges, and future opportunities in which Ohio State can strengthen their partnership and direct support of this population. We will start the webinar with a candid conversation amongst the panelists. Please feel free to post your pondering questions using the Q&A function, and we will be sure to address them throughout the presentation. We also have Ms. Summer Lucky here to assist us in that process. The first question that I would like to pose to the group is, what personal experiences led you to work in higher education?
I'm a first generation college student. So when I went to college, there are a lot of issues and barriers that I did face. I grew up in a predominantly Black area. So when I went to a PWI, so there are a lot of issues that I did face that I did not, like a lot of academic issues, a lot of support that was just not there. It was just a challenge. So that kind of gave me the initiative, the drive to kind of, go into higher education, because I was also very involved in undergrad. So right out of grad school, I worked for the AmeriCorps program, helping students get to college, and they kind of really sparked my interest of, you know, taking higher education as a lifelong career. So like I said, I think the inequities that, you're in face of being Black and also first gen and also considered a Pell eligible student, like the things that you have to face with financial aid, navigating how to talk to your professors, your academic advisors, just that struggle that you go through that, you kind of don't want the next generation to go through. So that really kind of, like I said, just sparked my interest in going to higher education.
For me, it was my freshman year in college. So like Darius, I'm also a first generation student, and so my knowledge of higher education is very limited. And I was just very fortunate with the place I chose to go, University of Akron. I knew some people there, including my first supervisor, and had a chance to work for a program called peer counseling, where the purpose of the program was to help students of color with the transition from high school going into college. So it was a perfect place to work. I had a chance to meet a lot of upperclassmen. And so even before classes start, I had a community uh, already. And so just by being a part of peer counseling, having a peer counselor, and then becoming a peer counselor, and also within that first year with Colleen Curry, with Miss Curry, who was the director of the program, I shadowed her and went with her to a workshop that she facilitated, and working with students who were kind of right on the verge of being dismissed, being academically dismissed, and watching her, and working with students in that workshop. I kind of knew right then and there, even though at that time I still didn't know too much about it as a career, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so higher ed for me was just life changing. And not having that knowledge about it, having a community, and then from there also just seeing the value of having people, especially people who look like you, that are supporting you. I knew that this is the field I wanted to go into.
I think my experience of the reason of going into higher ed, I guess you can kind of say sometimes your plan is not always the plan. I was a first gen myself, and my goal was to go to college, and I really didn't have that support at home. I didn't have those resources. I'm a graduate from the University of Toledo, but I'm born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio. So prior to actually going to UT, never had been to Toledo, didn't know anyone there. So I had to deal with a lot of those struggles and just getting acclimated. But my goal was to be a teacher. And because just during my K through 12, I never experienced a Black male teacher. I never had one. So my plan was to change the game. I was going to be the new improved Joe Clark, like on Lean On Me. But things, like I said, the plan didn't always stay the same. So I found myself, after I graduated, working in youth outreach. And I actually had a student come to me that I was working with, and they kind of shared that they said, "Hey, Mr. Robinson, I'm in this program and I have a scholarship to Ohio State. But I haven't saw my advisor, I haven't heard from him. So I don't even know if I have a scholarship anymore." So just advocating on their behalf, I kind of saw that there was an opening, and just kind of thinking about all the trials and tribulations I went through myself as far as going into school. It was just a perfect opportunity for me to kind of stay on the course, working with youth in that education capacity, but also just continuing to help them succeed. So here we are, like 6 years later.
My experience is probably just a little different than everybody else's. I'm not a first generation college student, but within my immediate family, like mother, father, I am the one that went to college. My sister recently graduated herself. But what led me to higher education was the fact that a lot of my close friends, best friends, were first generation college students. So I always wanted to find myself, in some kind of capacity, assisting those who are navigating, college for the first time, not just, being that novice freshman on campus, but also the resource, the people. And from then on, I always took the initiative to, go back home and, speak to the, kids under me, whether they're a year younger than me or not, about my experiences in college, how to navigate applying for universities, even letting them know that, because my first institution was, Ohio State, that you don't necessarily have to attend a big institution to be successful. Wherever you find, that's comfortable is, where you ultimately want to spend your 4 to 5 years. Because once you get out into the real world, it's not going to be as comfortable, but you want to put yourself in an environment where you can groom yourself, you can grow, and you can, expand your garden, so to speak. So when it is time for you to embark, into corporate America, as we all, see it, you have as many resources or many notches on your utility belt as possible.
Okay, so several of you have spoke about your own personal challenges while navigating during your first and or second, third, fourth, or maybe more years of your undergrad career. Can you speak to the barriers or challenges that you now face while advocating on behalf of individuals of color while working to achieve their bachelor's degree? And how receptive have your peers been to your ideas regarding supporting underrepresented students?
I want to kick this one off because since I'm not necessarily on the university side of things, I'm in athletics. It's the microaggressions that you're only here because you're an athlete. You're only here because of what you did on the field, on the court, in the water, whatever it is. And what I try to do is, communicate with these young men and women that, hey, you are more than an athlete. I know that's a slogan that's actually been, circulating, tremendously over the last 18 months. And that you have a different skill set. You don't have to let sports be the only thing that guides you to where you want to go. You could let it be, the catalyst, because there are endless opportunities, here, and you're in a very special place. And, from peer reception, it's hit or miss. Those that look like me, that look like us that are on this call, they're the ones that get it. Those that don't, that's where the miss becomes. They don't see this as an opportunity for somebody to actually reshape their own lives. A lot of people, and this is one of the biggest misconceptions, is that, there are people, who know what they want to do at the age of 12. No, that's not the case. A lot of us don't have those representative, people who work in these different career fields to aspire to be, talk to consistently, to run into. And if you were in any situation like mine, I grew up in an area, especially the Detroit public school system, where the teachers were there for themselves. They didn't really care for everybody else. They wanted to make sure they got their numbers and they went home and got their paycheck every 2 weeks or however often they got paid. And that was it. So, letting them know that you are more than a number, you are more than, your athletic status. and trying to find those peers that actually understand that. A lot more difficult than I expected it to be, but with the work that I'm currently doing now to help aid that, those peers that I've been able to, seek out and connect with, spreading that message as best as possible.
Oh, go ahead, Darius.
I would say while advocating for, this is my second institution. I worked at Mizzou before I came here and also graduated from Mizzou. And I think the biggest issue that I face while advocating for, especially students that look like me, is how reactionary our leadership can be sometimes. It takes something big to happen that now we need to start focusing on Black students, like George Floyd happening and what happened. Everyone put up Black squares on Instagram. Like I said, I went to University of Missouri. The big protest uprising happened there. Now we need to start serving Black students. So, I think it's people like us who are on the grounds doing the work, who are advocating for a change, advocating for the things that students that look like us need, but it always takes some reaction, something to happen to our leadership to finally hop on board to really get serious and start making policy change, and which I do not like at all, but that is just the reality that we have to face sometimes.
The politics, and so I think when you're advocating for students with marginalized or minoritized identities, even the support and advocacy is political. There's you can do this, but don't go too far, or don't do this because of whether it's alumni base or it's perspective of people outside the university who have varying different political views. And so the advocacy a lot of times it takes an extreme amount of imagination, I feel sometimes, because sometimes it feels like it is this very fine line that you're walking. And then with that, it can be difficult where, for some students, they may feel that, hey, we're not doing enough. But then you might have others in administration who might say you're doing too much. And so then it becomes kind of that, push and pull kind of thing that as administrators we face sometimes in how we advocate. I would also say that with that, I think there's sometimes there's the kind of the loss of perspective. And so with that, I think there is so much more that for people who advocate for students of color agree about. But then in regards to the how, I think there's a lot of conflict, which is okay. But hopefully we don't forget about the camaraderie piece. And so for me, one of my favorite movie scenes, so going to Sam's reference in regards to the movie Lean On Me, was when Morgan Freeman's character and Robert Guillaume's character got into this heated confrontation about how the main character was approaching, how he was exercising his leadership over the school. And so they're having this just knockdown, drag out kind of just verbal confrontation. But then at the end of the confrontation, it was like, all right, come on, let's go get something to eat. And so that's where I think sometimes, hopefully, we don't lose that part of it in regards to, for everyone who's on this call, I know, and I consider them like we have a bond, and we should be able to kind of look out for each other. And at the same time, it's okay to disagree as it relates to how we advocate. And so to me, those are some of the challenges, is like, how do we make sure we don't get too caught up in infighting amongst those who have similar roles and positions? And then also at the same time, how do we kind of work with those external forces that don't really like what we're doing, unless all of a sudden, like Darius is saying, it's on the front news. And now all of a sudden people, have an ear and they want to listen, and there's all these different initiatives. And then at the same time, how do we communicate with students in regards to, these are some of the things that we can do, and these are some of the things that we know that you still want us to advocate for, and we're still trying to figure out how we can do that.
Which brings up the next topic. You talking about advocating for the students and really relaying that to them on what we can or what may not be possible. So what does your presence as a Black male staff member mean to you personally, as well as how does it affect your department?
I find joy in it. But what it means to my department is I kind of feel like I'm just part of the quota. I don't know. There could be more of us, especially at the leadership level, the senior leadership level. But I don't necessarily get caught up in me being a Black male at an institution with the kind of prestige and esteem that it holds. I'm about the work. I'm about the action. I don't care about the grandeur, that comes with the brand. To be honest with you, and we're talking about movie quotes. To Darius Whitaker's experience, at Mizzou. One of my favorite quotes of any movie is from the Avengers: Age of Ultron, and Tony Stark mentions to Ultron about creating peace, and Ultron tells him, "You're confusing peace with quiet." It feels like, as a people, everything that we do is, given some kind of quiescent viewpoint. We're not really heard. There's no interactions on creating some form of peace. It's only to hush us up. So being a Black male, in my role for as long as I've been in it, doesn't necessarily mean the most to me, in the sense that I'm here and I have it, because I see a lot of that, the people that look like me, that hold those, titles, that are complacent. They are okay with where they are. And I'm not okay. I'm looking to grow upward and outward, and bringing people with me. Not to, hop on my soapbox, but I knew Dr. Sudduth and Dr. Lee when they were doing their doctoral programs, and they always relate that same message to me whenever we linked up. It was, how are you growing? How are you doing? And are you continuing to grow? They always ask me, how am I growing, two different ways, but it kept me on my toes. I wouldn't be here without that. And I firmly believe that they've shown me that, okay, you're Black in this position, but what else are you doing? Are you just being Black in this position, or are you doing something with it?
So I work in the College of Engineering. My background is in engineering. And so my presence as a Black man in that space, I think, is important. I think that as we talk about just the self-efficacy of our students, that in certain subject areas, it can be particularly at a PWI, it can be particularly difficult for students to be able to manage kind of the psychological wear and tear of the day-to-day, right? So when you're in classes and classrooms that are predominantly white or predominantly male for our Black female students, or for our Hispanic or Indigenous students, right? When we are in these spaces, it's very difficult to be able to navigate feeling confident in your abilities, right? And so I get the unique opportunity, having navigated engineering degree programs in PWIs from undergrad all the way through a doctoral program, of understanding what that experience is like. And for the parts of it that I don't understand, I can certainly empathize, and I'm able to really speak life to our students, to remind them about the parts of us that we have to, be anchored in. And so consistently being able to show them how to navigate these programs and how to navigate these spaces is a really important part of the work that I do. I develop very loving relationships with the students that we serve. We're looking to take care of them. I think the challenge in that is that, you got to send them back out into it. So myself and my colleagues in the Office of Diversity Outreach and Inclusion have created, a really good, safe space for the students that we serve within the college. And, it's great that we can patch them up and kind of equip them with tools, but ultimately we have to send them back out into that space that is not as safe, that they can feel like they're not valued, like they're not being taken care of, and not just feel that, but in many cases, that is very much the experience. It's an experience that I had as a student. And so the challenge is, can we do more than just, patch our students up and send them back into a situation where they're, honestly being hurt, and so that's something that I'm trying to navigate. But I think the position and the roles of not just me, but the colleagues that I work with in making sure that we are equipping our students with the tools to empower them to navigate the spaces that they're in is essential.
Yeah, that's a hard question, Dan. Mr. Thomas. In regards to presence, because I think part of it is self-conscious, having those moments of being self-conscious. If I am, trying to lead my team in a certain way, or, we're trying to work on something, and people are questioning that. Are they questioning in regards to principle, or are they questioning in regards to some of the things that they might not even be thinking of as it reflects in my identities as a Black man? And so that's something that, sometimes I think about. I also too, with my presence, I just think about that in regards to, there's a difference in regards to when it's just you, just like we talk about with our classmates versus, well, what would my department be like if there were 4, 5, 6, 7 other people in regards to my presence then? So I'm really chewing on that question in regards to what that means. It definitely was much more of a transition than I really gave thought to in transitioning from the Bell National Resource Center, which was a predominantly Black male environment, to the Multicultural Center, which wasn't. And thinking about what was my presence like in the BRC versus in the MCC. So that's something I've been, definitely, I think about that. There have been times where I've, been in leadership team meetings where I've been outspoken, or just I'd had a lot of questions. But then at the same time, I also feel like, well, how are other people taking this as one of the only few Black men in this group? And I'm the one that's asking all these questions. Should I step back? Because I just always think of just not having that same freedom, that white men have in roles. I think, I think about, President Obama a lot in regards to, just who gets the right to be angry. And to me, there's nothing wrong with being angry. If there's, well, I don't know, maybe maybe shouldn't be angry. I don't know. I'm gonna stop there. But those are just some of my thoughts on that. So I'm still chewing on that question.
All right, I would like to
Hey,
ask Sam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to kind of just jump in and just kind of share my perspective is a little different. I commend all of the panelists, just for kind of just sharing your challenges and things that you guys have to endure, just being on campus. I primarily work in the city of Toledo on the pre-collegiate side. So with the Young Scholars Program, just kind of backing up, our goal is to improve higher ed access for academically talented, low-income first-gen students. So we're based in 9 of the largest urban school districts in the state of Ohio. So working from Toledo, I really don't see that impact that you all are speaking about, because I'm not in I'm not in Columbus primarily. So I don't really see it when it comes to, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. I really haven't had that. I haven't came into any issue where I felt like a coworker outside of YSP department, whether it was any department within ODI, to be hesitant on assisting with one of the students that I work with. So my perspective on that is a little different, and it's just because of the not being on campus.
So we touched on, our interactions within our department. Can you speak a little bit about the opportunities for you to collaborate with colleagues outside your department, and how does your department and or the university encourage or support this collaboration?
I can take this. I think there's opportunities there on your own. Like, you have to seek that out for yourself. There is no structured really way. In my department is all white. I've been the only Black person there for about 2 years now. So it's just like, if you want that kind of collaboration with other departments, you have to do that on your own. There's really no structured way with the university to kind of do that type of collaboration.
Yeah, same thing. As long as it's not affecting the bottom line, you're okay, I guess. And I know I say that kind of passively and kind of unsure, because you don't know if these opportunities you're seeking to help yourself grow, if you're stepping on people's toes. And that's something that I guess we as Black men and even women have to think about. Like, some of us are okay with ruffling feathers. I'm one of those, there's a kind of a time and place for everything, but if you have to disturb the peace, go ahead. But, there really is no structure. It's okay, this is good. All right, handle it. But, if it starts affecting the bottom line, you know what you have to get rid of.
I haven't had any issues. So collaboration partnerships are encouraged. Like Darius said, though, there's not really structure. It's really more of, that person's initiative in going out and finding people who also are willing to collaborate or partner.
All right, so please, guests, be reminded to please feel free to use our Q&A function if you have questions that you would like to ask our panelists. At this time, I will ask our first question that was posed. What support does Black male staff have university-wide? Women and women of color staff have OSU affinity groups and offices such as the Women Place, Ohio State Advance, and WIMS to help address their needs. Are there any for Black male staff? If not, would it be helpful to have them?
Yeah, so there have been efforts. What we don't have is a formal kind of group or organization. And so we have had multiple gatherings. We do have a group now that's called Black Fam that is set up. And so there is a group, but in regard as being as active as the group that was mentioned for women of color or for Black women, no, that's something I don't know if that we have right now. But with Black Fam, we do have something where we have an executive team. There have been things that have been done in the past. And so we've had a lunch group as well, where we would get together so people would kind of get to know each other, since the university is so big that for some Black men, it might be that kind of the only person in the classroom experience all over again, and which can lead to just not really being as engaged, and it just becomes very transactional with coming to work and going home. So there have been some efforts. We just we still are I want to say we, like, I'm the spokesperson, like, for all the organizational stuff that's going. From what I've observed, we're still not completely there yet, though.
Okay, so some of you have already spoke about being the only person within your department. What steps do you believe that the university can take to increase the ethnic and gender diversity within the staff ranks?
That's a loaded question. There are a lot of things they can do. I think I just speak from I think being intentional where they recruit and where they post their job postings. I feel like, sometimes it can feel like that they, especially if you're in a predominantly white area, they go to their network and their network is usually white, and that's how they recruit their next person. Or some people that, just be candid, like who usually worked at the university before and they know them. So it's just like that's how they're going to recruit. That I just know you, so why don't you just apply for this position? Um, and then also giving I don't think there's like, I don't know, I'm speaking from my, but there's not a structured lineage to kind of see like the next step. I think there's some people that have been at the university in these roles for like 15-20 years. They're not leaving anytime soon. And me speaking as a millennial, we don't expect to be in entry level positions or mid-level positions forever. So like there has to be some attraction, some growth we have to see there. So
Yeah. I think that for some positions, I think there could be some opportunities for homegrowing talent. And so I remember when Gregory Washington was here as the dean or interim dean of the College of Engineering. He had a proposal for really using this type of practice for faculty, in order to be able to have more faculty of color within a college by working with the students you currently have who are in the program. And so I think there are things like that, but like Darius said, higher ed is a very flat organizational structure, and the opportunities for advancement aren't always there, which makes it even more challenging in trying to get more professionals of color, more Black men into higher ed. Um, and so I think really having the networks like Black Fam. So Jonathan Baker, I saw your message in there. So Jonathan Baker is also on the executive team for Black Fam. Lenoris Alexander. I'm also on the executive team, not as active as I should be. But having some of these different networks, I think could be helpful. And then also, I think I think sometimes there's just that intersection of race and first generation, kind of not only student, but then also first generation in regards to working in professional positions. And so with that, I think sometimes there are some skills, some different experiences that I know that, some things I just didn't know. That, knowing those things earlier in my career definitely would have been helpful in regards to my trajectory. And so I think that's where, having ERGs or the organizations can be helpful if they're are structurally sound in being able to provide some of that mentorship. I just think overall, it's just like Darius said, it's just going to be a challenge. Higher ed is a very transient career, if that's the correct word. With a lot of times people stayed in positions 2 to 4 years. Again, because, of the lack of opportunity for advancement, as well as higher ed is definitely a very collegial kind of industry where a lot of people know each other, and you have a lot of use of cultural and social capital in that way. And we're not banks, so there's some cities where you might only have one big higher ed institution and then maybe a couple of smaller colleges, and that makes it even more challenging. And so I think in regards to a strategy, it would need to be a very well-developed kind of plan in regards to not only recruiting, but also keeping people here.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that last point, I think kind of evaluating the ethnic and gender diversity that we have now and working on keeping the people that we have, right? And so I think we have to evaluate the spaces that we operate in, make sure that we are operating equitably, and showing the people that we work with that are our colleagues, that may have less access to privilege than we do, that they are valued in those spaces, and elevating their voices and empowering them, giving them opportunities to grow, where we have the influence to do so, can help to enhance what's already here, and hopefully give that an opportunity to grow. I mean, it's hard even when you bring in someone new, for them to grow and be rooted here if we already have an environment that doesn't support the folks that are in it.
So several of you touched on a couple topic. Well, in your dialogue, you touched on the opportunities for growth and or promotion. Can you speak to your personal experiences and how the university, your department, and or your supervisor directly have supported you in this endeavor? Or have not?
I can go first. I wouldn't be in the position I am in today without some of my previous supervisors. So first, Dr. Karen Allsbrooks, who gave me my first position at Ohio State, and then also guided me to the master's program in public affairs. And then with Dr. Moore, having that flexibility to do a PhD program while working in the Bell Resource Center. And so those are some ways in regards to advancement. Other ways that have been, definitely there's been some frustration in regards to, there have been times where I've tried to seek opportunities for promotion or advancement, and it has been difficult, or there have been mixed messages. And I don't want to go all the way into full detail about that. But for my experience, it definitely has been a mixed bag. There's definitely been things I can point to and say, yes, I have been supported in these areas. And then there's also been times where, I didn't always feel supported. So yeah. This is being recorded, Dan. That's a personal question. I can only say so much.
Well, you don't have to throw out names.
I just think as a supervisor, if you really have the best interest of the person that you're overseeing and that you're quote unquote trying to groom or help groom, if you have their best interest at heart, you should show that. Just don't entertain what I'm saying if your intent isn't to help. I'm just leave it at that.
I think from my viewpoint, I would say within the Young Scholars Program, our executive director, Dr. Thomas, is definitely helpful and, not only just motivating for looking for opportunities, but, providing resources to assist me just to, better prepare myself for the next move. So, we'll have conversations and it's like, how can I get you to Columbus, Sam? Working from Toledo. So just, making sure that, I'm aware of things and up to par on different things so that, if an opportunity does come up, that I'll be prepared for it. So I'm appreciative to, our leadership and YSP in that aspect of promotion.
I think our office is more so like you put your time in and you kind of leave. There's no elevation, there's no development to move up. Like I said, we've mentioned that like most people in leadership in my office have been at the university forever and have no desire to leave anytime soon. So it's like you just put your time in and you peace out. So
I've been particularly lucky to work in a situation where the folks above me in the organizational chart have taken particular time to mentor me and help me to kind of see bigger picture things, help me to figure out ways to use opportunities in my role to grow and to gain new skills. So Lisa Barclay and the now retired Donnie Perkins have taken great care of me and helped me to really grow in the position I'm in. So I certainly feel that I've been invested in well during the time I've been here.
Hey, there was a question that was added to the chat. Do any of you serve on a board outside of work?
Yes, I serve on 2, and I'm the co-founder of 1. So I find most of my experience into what I want to do externally.
Serve on 2 boards. One, I help to co-found for the Big Ten. So it's a Big Ten group for directors of cultural centers or multicultural centers, because that just didn't exist like it did for people who work in conduct or in residence life or in some of the other more quote unquote traditional areas of student affairs. And also it's more challenging because there's a lot of variance within the structure and services that cultural centers provide, which makes it harder. And so that's one. And so another one is a statewide one, the Ohio Consortium of Multicultural Centers in Higher Education, that we're still working to kind of get back on track more. And then used to serve on the Friends of the Columbus Metropolitan Library board here. That's it. That sounds like a board recruiting question. It sounds like somebody's trying to recruit for a board.
You peep that too?
If you're on here, holla at me.
Here in Toledo, I do sit on a couple boards, and they're all geared towards, just youth outreach and college access and college readiness. So just continuing to be an impact in the community and finding the best ways to assist the students that I serve here in Toledo.
This past year, I served on NASPA's Planning Committee Board, which NASPA is a student affairs organization. I did that this past year. Probably will not do that this year. I'm trying to graduate because I'm in an EDD program, so I would not be doing that.
I don't serve on any boards currently. Nah, I might have just set myself up.
So we have another question that was posed. Each panelist mentioned the support of Black women and their promotion and tenure at the university. Can you speak more on your relationship with women of color and how women have played a role in your mentorship and development?
I'll go ahead and there. I'm sorry, Nick.
You got it.
So I came into my role fresh out of grad school with no experience as a higher ed professional. And so my boss, Lisa Barclay, had a lot of trust and faith in my ability to take on the role that I took on, and has supported me in every way possible, has encouraged me to grow. And so I owe a lot of my growth in this career, my growth as a professional, to the work that she's done. I think generally working in the role that I do, I pay particular attention to my Black female students, because navigating engineering for them is a different challenge. It's tough being a Black student, but Black male students can move in engineering in a way that Black female students can't, right? There are certain things that even in all of my experiences, the negative experiences that I had in my engineering career as a student, that professors did not try with me. That is just not the case for a lot of our Black female students. So it has been particularly important. It's been a focus for me to ensure that I'm constantly helping them to, empowering them and helping them to both recognize and operate in their talents and abilities, to remind them to take up all the space that they are owed, and to trust the things that are in them, and to not question their abilities, their giftedness, their work, their minds. It's been a particular pleasure just to be able to have a space for them to be their whole selves as students, not to just look at them as engineering students, but to let them operate freely, or to give them the space to operate freely as Black women as they grow as students, problem solvers, and ultimately engineers.
Yeah, for me, it was two women of color who helped me get my first position at Ohio State. So Dr. Anna Barrios from Career Counseling and Support Services, and Sharia Dial. And so that's how I was able to really to successfully apply to work at Ohio State. And then from there, most of my supervisors, most of my close colleagues, and I get, from those interactions, kind of, piggybacking a little bit off of what Edwin said, that is where I got to learn a lot more in regards to the privilege I have as a Black man, and seeing how they were treated sometimes. And seeing some of the ideas, some of the proposals, some of the things that they tried to bring up, and either not being heard, or pushed to the side, or just not given the same kind of opportunities. And so that's something that, is still something that, I try to acknowledge and do better, and know I still have a lot of work to do. But yeah, like my career path is paved, I stand most of the shores I stand on are the shores of Black women in regards to my career, from the inspiration of going to higher ed, to a lot of people I still stay in touch with today for advice or support. So that is something that I try to keep in mind, and then also to just trying to be more vocal in regards to Black male privilege, in regards to whether it's workshops or trainings. I did one at Kent State, and definitely excited in doing more, because I think this is still an area within the Black community that we definitely have a lot of work to do. I know that was kind of soapboxy. That kind of went beyond the question, but no, I mean, yeah, that with this career, it's not as many Black men in higher ed, and I'm just very thankful for the support I've gotten from a lot of Latinx women, a lot of Black women in higher ed.
So speaking to that statement, and also taking into consideration our time, I do have one last question I would like to ask all of our panelists. And this is something that's simple. It's something that, there's been a lot of research around over time, but can you speak to the additional duties that you accrue serving as one of the only Black identifying staff members within your department and or at the university?
I think in my particular office, I think just being the one, it's kind of a good thing, but it's also taxing, because your Black students cling to you, and they want to, they want to express, what they're experiencing. They want to develop those relationships, but it's also a daunting task because you're the only one who they feel comfortable talking to in that office. So I feel like that it's a privilege, but it's also it's a daunting task. And it's just, how do you get your other white colleagues to kind of bear some of the burden of like what they're experiencing in this office, what they're experiencing at the university? How do you get some of them to help you out, and give you a little break sometimes? But I appreciate that they want to talk to me, because we relate, because we, Black student at a PWI, that's my experience as well. But it's like sometimes, it can be taxing, because it's, you're experiencing life as well. When things happen in the world, when George Floyd got killed, you experience those emotions as well. Like, how come I'm the only one who have to speak up, be the voice of reason to the staff about like normalizing your feelings, or you're like, you can come to talk to me. I think that, like I said, sometimes that should be shared amongst the colleagues in the office as well.
I would say in my department with YSP, I think I wouldn't call it an extra duty, but just a personal obligation of mine is just when I have scholars who enter the program, African American males, is just making sure that I I am an impact to them, you know, and I'm motivating and pushing them. I just had a conversation, you know, yesterday with one of my 10th grade students, and we were going over grades, and they had all A's. And I told them that, you know what, I'm like, I said, you so right that you wrong. And he didn't understand. He was like, what are you talking about, Mr. Robinson? I said, do you know, statistics say that you're more likely to walk in a prison than a college or a university. But if you continue to do what you're doing, showing up every day, continuing to improve, you know, you proving everyone wrong. So I told him, like, you so right, you wrong. And he was like, yeah, I get that, Unc, because, you know, they won't call me Unc now, but just, you know, just that feeling of being able to empower, you know, African-American males like myself, or students like myself, and just working with them so that they can see someone like themselves in a position of leadership and continuing just to motivate them and push them. So, like I said, I don't see it as an extra duty, but just like a personal obligation of my own.
I think I am. Would I call our office progressive? I guess I would. Look, there's a lot of us in in the office that I work in now, and so that's a great benefit. We definitely share the workload of supporting our students in that way, and so my perspective is probably largely shaped by that experience. It's challenging, right? You know, there are days, you know, when we were all on campus together, that you have walk-ins all day, and you're dealing with a lot, and it can be a lot to carry the burdens of those students when they're dealing with all the things that they're dealing with. But it's also it's really great to be able to help them not panic, to help them to see their power in this situation, their ability to coach them up, to remind them of how amazing they are. So it doesn't feel so burdensome.
All right. So I want to thank our esteemed panelists for participating in today's session. I hope everyone agrees that the information provided helped us gain a firm understanding of the experiences of a select group of OSU Black male staff members. As shared during the first 3 segments, I hope to see the information obtained throughout the series serve as a conduit in producing change throughout the university. I would like to personally thank Dr. James L. Moore III for providing these gentlemen the space to share their stories. I think it's much overdue, and look forward to hearing more stories as we move forward. I would also like to thank our guests that participated and supported us in all of our sessions. I wish each and every one of you the best as we head into the holiday seasons. Have a great day and stay safe.